We've supported TransLink with $800 million over the last... That was a bug. It was a bee. I'm fine.
Hey folks, my name is Mo Amir and this is VANCOLOUR, British Columbia's bona fide culture and politics TV talk show. We are so close. Just a couple dozen hours away from the 2024 provincial election coming to an end. And it's been a lot, you know? We learned that using a blow dryer to blow hot air up your nose doesn't cure COVID, but thankfully 5G networks don't spread COVID. An internet meme was cited in the televised leaders debate. We spent a whole news cycle talking about eating bugs. Speaking of which, a wasp kamikazed the premier. Don't worry, he survived. The premier, not the wasp. Which makes me wonder, was it the worst election ever? Let's talk about it. Our first guest tonight is a Métis comedian and entertainer behind the largest Canadian political show on Twitch. Returning to the show, a fan favorite, Lance of the Serfs. Lance, hello.
Thank you so much for having me again.
So nice to see you. Now, when we look at this provincial election, I know you've been following it as well. We had a meme cited in the leaders debate. Has this election basically been an election of memes, which is to say it kind of lacks substance?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the people who aren't like terminally online, like
us,
like you and me are, right? Prefer sickos, obsessed with the internet kind of stuff. A lot of it might catch them off guard, right? Because it seems a little strange to hear about children being forced to eat bugs or hearing about Nuremberg 2.0 and stuff like that. I think what you're witnessing right now is someone like John Rustad, who's the leader of the Conservatives. He has spent so much time doing right-wing podcasts, being very interspersed with the right-wing kind of media circuit, that he's started to repeat a lot of their talking points that used to be just relegated on, again, obscure podcasts of the far right and stuff like that. We're now starting to see what it, like when Facebook memes translate into real life. This is kind of the manifestation of it, is this election cycle.
And you hit on something important there, because it's not just the fringe corners of the internet. I mean, this is a lot of stuff that you and I may even see on Facebook. And it reminds me of people that are on Facebook a lot and they get information from Facebook that just is not true, or and actually is probably more conspiratorial, right?
Right. So you've heard just do your research, right?
Yeah.
Like the famous
Everyone's
words,
doing
right?
their own research. Yeah.
I did my own research. When it comes to, a lot of the conspiracy theories that spread on the internet, it's Facebook, Twitter, it doesn't matter what the social media is. There's definitely a problem, and like Facebook whistleblowers have revealed this, that there's an incentivization for a lot of these like algorithm-driven social media networks to continue to promote incendiary content, to get content out there that drives engagement, that keeps you fixated on it. And a lot of that, unfortunately, is just not true. And a lot of it is also very politically motivated to keep you mad. Like if you make a post that's just puppies are great, then you might get, so many likes. If you make a post that's like my other opponent is trying to kill puppies, suddenly people are sharing it. People are angry. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not.
Yeah. So it maybe not memes, but then it definitely feels like the internetification of BC politics, right? Is that what we're seeing?
Yeah, I would say a lot of that. And also some of the memes, or I would say just the things that say Rustad is saying, or some of his, contemporaries or other associates, these are things that people don't recognize because they probably haven't been as immersed in right-wing podcast culture. So they don't know about this conspiracy that's on the right, that in order to solve climate change, they're going to force kids to eat bugs instead of having cows or meat or stuff like that. And it's funny, it's fun to laugh at them. But at the same time, there's such a large percentage of people now who believe these kind of things that say in the United States right now, meteorologists are getting death threats. They're getting people calling in because they think the weather is controlled by machines, right? And so we're seeing these kind of things, and they pour into politics in Canada as well, where you have people who call in death threats, bomb threats to schools because they think that children are being endangered by the existence of gay kids and stuff like that.
Right.
Or you see the event where like, I think by the time Rustad had made it onto Jordan Peterson's podcast, right, he had kind of evolved into being on mainstream conservative kind of talk shows. And you get a person like Peterson who's talking to him face to face, being like, maybe there's not a problem for carbon-based life forms. And that's being, but that's being repeated by John, right? Where like we're all made of water. I think I would drown, right? Like you as well. We're both made of atoms, but if a piano falls on me, it's going to crush me.
Sure.
So, but like just on the surface, it seems like, oh, well, he might be making sense. So when you get people who are now, as politicians, repeating the things you would hear Alex Jones say, right? Like, oh, they're putting chemicals to make the frogs gay and things like that. It gets really dangerous when policymakers are also believing that, when they're also spreading that, when they're also saying it as a matter of fact, without any kind of checks or balances in place.
And I think it's fair to note that these right-wing podcasts, the right-wing sphere, particularly the sphere that does delve into conspiracies and these type of reductive arguments, they're huge. They get massive numbers. We're not talking about something that's really underground. These get bigger numbers than legacy or mainstream media, right?
Yeah, but it goes back to there is an incentivization for them. There's a very big monetary reward if you are pushing incendiary content that keeps people engaged on social media. So all of a sudden you might have people who normally would only be posting about, kind of their own typical inner circle or very close politics. They're posting about all kinds of stuff. They're posting about LGBTQ plus stuff. They're posting about climate change and conspiracy theories. And you've got the same people, again, like Jordan Peterson, he's got a very specific specialization. And yet he's talking about climate change as if it's a myth, right? And the same thing applies to so many of these other now intellectual dark web figures. They're incentivized to keep pushing out very incendiary content.
Does this ultimately turn off regular voters who are not on those internet spheres of, conspiracy and stuff? Does that turn them off? Like, let's say there's someone who doesn't like the NDP or doesn't like their policies. Are they going to look at what Rustad is saying and saying, hey, I'm just going to bow out? Or do you think they're going to be more motivated to keep someone like John Rustad out of power?
Well, I mean, I think the NDP are certainly hoping so.
They're making that pitch. yeah, absolutely.
That pitch. When it comes to politics, I mean, the statistics seem to demonstrate that most people are still concerned about the meat and potatoes issues, right? How's the economy doing? How's the jobs doing? And then, yes, the existential crisis of climate change does drive some voters, but they're not primarily concerned with issues like, say, whether or not trans kids are destroying the curriculum for students, right? That hasn't shown itself to be very politically motivating in the United States and Canada as well. Whereas, again, unemployment rates do drive out more voters. So I would say the answer is no, and it's unfortunate that a lot of people sometimes think this is the best line of attack. Let's simply point out how abhorrent they are. I would personally like it if people being, distinctly racist towards Indigenous folk was disqualifying. Yeah, I would like people who trivialize the Holocaust to not be able to be lawmakers. I think that is personally disgusting, right? But that doesn't seem to be an effective strategy in and of itself.
I want to play devil's advocate for a second. Someone might be watching the show and go, look at these two lefty radicals. They're the ones that are weird and extreme. They're in favor of decriminalization. They're in favor of cancel culture for things that people have said in the past. What do you say to that? That no, it's actually the other side that's extreme.
I mean, I say, first off, if you're worried about the war on drugs, unfortunately, it's over. Drugs won. They won the war. I mean, drugs are more prolific now. They're more available. They're cheaper than they've ever been. They are highly profitable to the worst possible people who want to engage in human trafficking, etc. Drugs won. But that aside, from people who are deeply concerned about, say, the left being obsessed with, woke culture or canceling or stuff like that, I think ultimately there are a lot of real world problems, and these things serve as distractions. A lot of these issues at the end of the day, even people like, Alex Jones or people who peddle in conspiracy theories, ultimately it does serve to protect people with a lot of capital and a lot of power who are controlling a lot more aspects of society. And unfortunately, it's not the Jews. It's not, a shadow of elites or a cabal or anything like that. It's billionaires, it's wealthy corporations. It's honestly, these are the people with power, investment firms, you name it. These are the people who have a lot more control in society than, say, the annoying liberal who's trying to cancel you over your take 20 years ago or something like that.
So yes or no, we got to wrap it up here. Are you a radical communist? I need to know.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Lance, a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure being here.
Folks, that was Lance from the Serfs. You can find the Serfs on YouTube, X, Instagram, and if you're on Twitch, be sure to tune into their content there. Now, after some business, we're going to continue the conversation with the Thais, Jen St. Dennis. Maybe she will convince us that it's not the worst election ever. Up next.